Greetings, rise and shine, brethren. We are the World Global Reset Restoration Network family, comprised of 198 sovereign nations with over 7 billion sovereign principles, being of one mind, one heart, and one spirit, walking together under the divine principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I come to you as a voice in the wilderness to introduce to you a man. No, not just any man, but a man sent by Yah Allah to redeem mankind. Dr. Hindu I.L. Henderson, the Adak Chief Justice of the Universal World Court, and who's also known as Yehoshua Mashiach, the Son of Man. The information that you will be receiving in this and other videos you won't get from anywhere else on the planet. Hear the many truths and fulfillment of the laws, judgments, and sentencings from our Creator, Father Yah, as well as the fulfillment of the true interpretation of the Holy Scriptures and books. Now, without further ado, Dr. Hindu I.L. Henderson with his beloved host, Shelley Bowling.
It's a sad gesture for a nation that has truly classified itself. It has lived on a reputation of being a nation that was a free nation. It has paid its way believing and having all others believe that it was a nation, one nation under God. It has made many of people believe that it was a nation exactly for nothing more than freedom. Let freedom ring, it would say. It has prided itself many a times on having the greatest people on the planet, the greatest citizens on the planet. It has prided itself on having a people, one people, that can be considered to be the freest people on the planet. And all these times gone past, those people have finally woke up themselves and realized that they are still being held captive. All of them. No, I'm not just talking about the black folk, the white folk. They realize that they're still being held captive. They were held captive to begin with. They came by way of King George III as a gift to the black world. They believed that the black world was nothing more than pygmies. They never could see them, but they used to see them from a distance, and they just believed that they were all pygmies, small people that were very hungry for flesh. So they built for themselves a prison in this land, believing that if they would at least put all of their trash out, their trailer park trash, their white people, their people in whom they knew would never be able to come up to the standards in which they were asking them to do. They were their rapists, their murderers, their thieves, their child molesters. even those who were in incest. So they just believed, King George did, that if he would place them on this little small place of a land, that they would somehow find themselves being eaten by the people alive, and whom he was placing them as prisoners amongst. And now they still too wake up realizing that they're still under this same threat. They realize that now that in which King George had set up for them is still among them. He put them in the land knowing that they themselves would show themselves true. He didn't fight a war. He gave them over. He let them go. Even though they had petitioned a higher power that was supposed to be higher than his. And they petitioned a God in whom King George himself knew and believed in very well, but he knew that they had no clue who and what God they were petitioning to. He already knew that. He knew that the God in whom, or this higher power that they were petitioning to, was never going to hear them out, never going to listen to them. At least he knew their lifestyle. He knew them to be murderers, thieves, yes, rapists, incestors. He knew exactly who they were and what they were all about. So he himself, he found no reason to feel threatened that they would someday come back home and overthrow him. He knew that for a fact. So he said, leave them where they're at. Don't want that trash back here. And right now, his would-be so-called children, his children, his inheritance, right now, if they still might deem themselves to be of a European people or a European world in which they built for themselves, designed it straight out of somebody's would-be fairy tale book, they themselves have started beginning to believe that as their great-great-great-great-grandfather would have had it, to allow those would-be poor white trash of a white people that he threw out of his nation and out of his country and out of his would-be area could remain out forever. And now they have begun to start setting up borders to make sure that they don't let any of them in. Let me help you out. Right now, EU, Europe, you name it, is coming together to make sure that they kind of come up with a sanction of their own. But it's not a sanction of saying they're going to stop someone from eating or stop someone from sleeping. They want to make sure that they stop them from visiting them. Just in case they decide to send enough people across the border that they might try to do what King George made sure that he prevented. They want to make sure they don't try to come back home and take it over. So now they're beginning to shut down the borders. Let me help you out, Caucasian brothers and sisters that aren't listening to me, that you still deem yourself to be such, and I know you only listen to me so you can try to disengage yourself or you can disprove what is being said, but I need you to listen to me. Right now, Germany has already placed up there would be boundaries to keep you out. European world. No, stop it. They're not putting it up there because of coronavirus. I need you to understand that. They're putting it up there for anything that you bring that they call BS. They will be. I kept it clean. I used the initials. Stop it. They said they're going to make sure that they keep you out. So you don't bring any of that BS up in that area. None whatsoever. It's not just because of coronavirus. It's because of your BS that you bring. And they're going to make sure they keep you out. And stop it again. They're not trying to cut off the border to the black folk. No, they're not trying to do that. They said they're cutting off the border to the United States of America. They didn't say the Negro off to those of you who migrated to the United States, if you might deem it to be such, that once upon a time classified yourself to be a European. So now they're going to make sure that you don't bring your European self back over there when you've already been classified to be in someone else's land as nothing more than a thief, a murderer, a money launderer, a rapist. Yeah, they want to make sure that they don't allow you back over there, because that's the same reason their great-great-great-great-grandfather kicked you out and put you in jail in another area, in another land, far, far away from him. Where else would you get this understanding? Where else would one tell you these truths? So I hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men will come to realize that yes, there is but one creator, and he is the creator known as Allah, God of the universe. And among those creations, he did intend for you to have life and have it more abundantly. He had for you that which would have been classified as liberty, known as sovereignty. He already had it prepared and made and created for you to have the pursuit of happiness. And you decided to give it all to the so-called would-be commanding, controlling chief of the United States of America, which is not a man, it's a system. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with one known as Barack Obama. It has nothing to do with William Jefferson Clinton, because all of them are part of what was known as the secret society of a system, whereby it was set up to keep the people enslaved and keep the people under slavery. And now everyone on the planet has come to nothing more than a realization that they never truly wanted to be in a nation of such. And even those of the foreign nations and countries now, who once dreamed of coming or even landing on the shores of what they deemed to be the sea of shining sea, in which they would have deemed themselves to be on a free would-be land. And now all of them regret even having that particular dream. For they know now, through their would-be weakness in their belief system, to believe that that nation was free. And after now doing an investigation to find out that that nation, for the past would-be 244 years of its own existence, of its own would-be admittance, that's how long it's been around, has kept its people in captivity and slavery for 244 years, knowing that now they're well into their 600th year of holding those people in captivity and slavery, and steady confusing the people by classifying them as citizens of freedom. United States, you got a lot to do. This nation still will not comply with any of the rules of law or the laws of the land. So as of 2002, January the 10th, it was said directly to the United States of America that because of treaties and patents and deeds, that the gross violation that they had done to the people of the land in which they found themselves being nothing more than guests, whereby they had taken over and classified themselves to be the host. They were said that, and they were given the law that they had to return it, they had to comply, they had to give it back to those people in whom they were holding in bondage, those people who they were renting, those people who they had classified to be somehow their property, by way of them being nothing more than thieves, murderers, rapers, those that were pillagers, those that were classified to be child pedophiles. They were nothing at best than that in which would have been deemed criminal, and a land whereby they were once given an opportunity to be nothing more than a guest. And to this day, they have not yet complied with it. They have not complied with the fact that the International Courts of Justice, the World Court, the International Criminal Court, found them to be nothing more than violators and criminals of the system that is classified as the universal world. And to this day, they haven't given it back. They have not complied. And whereby they have been now, for at the best, we would say since 1999, they were told to comply. Because as of 2002, after the vote of all the judges of the universe, they were told to return it. And they have not yet complied. Yes, I know. The majority of you are going to say that you're not aware of that. Many of you are going to even say, if you're living in the U.S. of A., you're going to say that you do not recognize the World Court. And you don't recognize anything that has a law that will at least come to the point of being a real law. A law whereby you would have to recognize it when you are classified to be the criminal. When you're classified to be the violator, then yes, you're not going to recognize any law. You're not going to just not recognize the World Court. You're not going to recognize the Supreme Court. You're not going to recognize the United States Supreme Court. Because then you will have to comply with the law. And because you don't want or you don't believe you have to comply to the law, you're going to say you don't recognize it. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be punished. That doesn't mean that this war, which would be classified as World War III, is going to somehow find its way around you. Not going to happen. It's going to come directly to you, and you're going to have to fight for your life. There's only one thing about it. You don't really truly know where your life begins, and you're surely not going to know where your life ends. Because the nations are not going to be listening to you when they come and to bring back the whole world to liberty, and when they come to bring back the whole world to freedom, they're not going to be listening to you with your mouth telling them that you don't recognize them or that you don't recognize righteous. They're going to show you what righteous is, and they're going to give you an up-close vision of what they look like so you'll be able to identify them and recognize. We now recognize the fact that it has only been 30 days, the day of June 25th, if I'm not mistaken. You remember, I don't like doing numbers. But June 25th, right now, from the day of what we might deem to be a day where the whole world began to hear a silent call for those that now have presented themselves as those who still cannot breathe. May 25th. May 25th to June 25th, I'm not counting, but I'll allow you to do it. I do believe that it's been less, if not a full 30 days, that now the whole world has been able to get results. They have been able to hear a voice from one man who couldn't even breathe. Stay with me, United Nations. He couldn't breathe, but he was uttering the words, "I can't breathe." And it seems to me, because he couldn't breathe, and that was the only thing that he could utter through gasping for air, that now less than 30 days, or let's just say 30 days, the whole entire universe has heard him. And they have taken action. Yes. And even though the world of the U.S. of A. and all of its so-called would-be scientific world of its so-called rule of law and how the law has to work for every man equal, they have also too heard this call of "I can't breathe." And even though now they have tried to vilify all of those who say that they also cannot breathe, they have tried to vilify them. They have classified them to be nothing more than rabble-rousers, those who they now have set and deemed them to be unrest, and a nation whereby it has been built on unrest. It has been built upon oppression. It has been built upon lies and manipulation. It has been built upon theft, money laundering, child molestation. It has been built upon nothing more than rape. It has been built upon nothing more than kidnapping, murder. Yes, one nation. Theft. All the things in which now will put one behind bars based upon the rule of law, based upon being transparent, based upon being those in whom will come forth to be held accountable. And yet it still deems itself to be some nation of freedom. It still deems itself to somehow once again want to make itself great again. And at the same time, it goes out to find those that still have their names on nothing more than a shift list of those that classified themselves once upon a time as being the Ku Klux Klan of the universe. They still deem themselves to be supreme grand wizards. And yet still, they want to put a hat back on them to place them at the head of the class as the president of the class once again, that everybody else in the class will be so dumbed down that they will be classified as ignorant, and the class president himself will be the greatest dummy of all, because he will be the one that believes that he's running a nation of people, a classroom of people, where he will be able to once again manipulate them and trick them and hold them under his powers, only that they might be able to be those that will still be subjects, locked in chains, not chains around their feet, not chains around their wrists, not chains around their neck, but chains around their brains. Where again, he will affix them to a world whereby they will not have to think for themselves. They will not have to realize for themselves. They will have no recognition of who they truly really are themselves, and they will rely on him to give them their identity. They would have to rely on him to give them their indexing, to tell them who they are, what group they're in, and why they have been classified as being those that are unless fortunate than those that can find themselves qualifying to get into some college called Harvard, or some college in Alexandria, or some college whereby he might be deemed to be one of the deans of the universe, where he will become so intelligent that he'll be able to run the so-called powers to be, to control all the people beneath him, when he himself will barely be able to go to the restroom and relieve himself and clean himself to the point that no one else will find any stains. Stay with me, God Almighty. This is the kind of world in which now has been deemed to be that world in which the whole world has found itself following that an example of the ignorant and the arrogant. And that arrogant and ignorant world now has placed the whole entire universe in a position where it is in a threat of losing itself and being annihilated by the ignorance of those who sit behind a so-called desk now, where he has a silent button that he can push and cause the whole world to come imploding in on itself, when he himself don't even know how to push the button, but he has some group of people that perhaps maybe 535 men and women that will sit around him and tell him it is now time for us to push the button because we cannot come up with a solution to set the people free. We cannot come up with a solution that we can give everybody justice on the planet. We cannot even come up with a solution where everybody will find themselves in love with one another. So just go ahead and push the silent button. How ignorant can 323 million people be, United Nations? They cannot see that if this person does not even have the mind, neither does he have the courage to be able to speak out to the people and tell them that this here in which we speak now is a reality of a total truth, then how can they classify him to be their leader? Or even she, if they might deem that they need one, with a less ability to be able to stick one leg in at a time, knowing that they will have to at least advance to the point of being able to stick 3 legs rather than only 2. Stay with me, I'll keep it clean, United Nations. But we must understand now that the world in which we live in, that's trying to cast off its would-be guilt on those that are much weaker than the stronger would-be ones, we must realize that we live in a world now where only 30 days has made a total difference. It has brought about something that is known as results from the actions of the whole entire universe now, by way of hearing one man who still we can barely hear him for the fact that he is screaming in his inner self while being able in his outer self to only be able to utter the words, I can't breathe. I'm giving you all this information for the simple fact. There are those of you that are still rejecting the truth. You're still in denial. And you still want to believe that this so-called would-be people in whom you have as an interest, because they are telling you that they're going to save you, they're giving you all these great promises. They've been giving them to you for 30 years now. Some of them have been around for 40 years. Some of them, they were there 50 plus years ago when Martin Luther King was marching for civil rights. And now they want to talk to you just now about civil rights. You would think now that civil rights is a new thing. You would think that civil rights was a new program now. So many of them are talking civil rights now. You would think that civil rights was to be for everybody. But at that time, they only had civil rights for black folks. Until Dr. Henderson came along and told them that civil rights should have been classified as CPR, civil people's rights. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation. If we're going to breathe life back into anybody, let's breathe it back into the whole world. And now they're talking about I can't breathe, when Dr. Henderson has been out here now for 30 plus years saying I am breathing life back into a dying world through CPR, and letting them know that you couldn't breathe then. God almighty. And just now you decide to tell the whole world that you can't breathe when I know you couldn't breathe 30 years ago. You couldn't breathe 50 years ago. Or you wouldn't have had me out there dancing around with CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, using the phrase breathing life back into a dying world. You wouldn't have had me out there doing that if you could have breathed. So now, I'm not attacking anyone that's out there mentioning the fact that they cannot breathe. I'm just bringing everyone to the reality check of the truth that you haven't been able to breathe for at least 500 years now. And I've been out there now for 30 plus years. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation, known as silver people's right. Better known to the world now as sovereign silver people's right. Even the website represented the website in which I'm on, it represents that. SOB, CPR, sovereign civil people's right. Sovereign civil people's right. SOB, CPR. And you still haven't gotten it. Breathing life back into a dying world, and you only just now in the past 4 months realize that you cannot breathe.